I think we should start. And I would like to welcome you all today to this webinar with the title Monitoring Plant Biodiversity with ntNet. Learn how to contribute to monitoring plant biodiversity by using citizen science. This is a webinar that has been organized by the Environmental Education Lab of the National and Kapodistrian University of Athens, and which has been, let's say, customized to address only the participants of our online course on citizen science and environmental education for sustainability. Just to remind everyone that this is an online course. This is a distance training program that has been designed, organized and run by the Environmental Education Lab, of course within the frame of the European project Course for Cloud. And this is a training course that has invited to participate a group of we identified them as key Greek educational stakeholders, that is people who are active and decisive in the support and implementation of environmental education and education for sustainable development in Greek primary and secondary schools in the wider Athens area. The aim of this online training course, which is in process, it's not completed yet. The aim of this course is not only to inform about the practice of citizen science or the Course for Cloud project or the involved citizen science observatories and the possibility to combine and integrate citizen science in current environmental education school practice. But the aim of this course is also to become a springboard for the design and development of some exemplary educational material that with the aid of which we aim to initiate and feed some real educational projects in Greek schools. And also another aim of this, another goal of this online training course is to act as a multiplier agent for more Greek teachers and schools to get engaged with citizen science in their environmental education practice. Then this webinar aims to introduce the participants of this training course to one of the most, I would say, prominent European citizen observatory on plant biodiversity monitoring, which is also one among the main collaborating citizen observatories in the Course for Cloud project. And this is the ntNet platform. And also to share with the participants, with you all who are participating, the experience and some insights about the educational use and potential of using this platform in schools. So I would say very happy, and I'm really thankful to the two invited speakers who are going to introduce the ntNet platform and to talk about all these things. They both come from France, and they are Alexis Joly, who is a researcher at INRIA, which is the French National Institute for Computer Science and Applied Mathematics, and he's also the co-leader of the ntNet project. And Pierre Bonnet, also a researcher, but at CIRAD, which is the Agricultural Research Center for Development. And Pierre is based at the AMAP laboratory, but he is also active through various roles, among which he is also the coordinator of the ntNet initiative. They are both partner colleagues under the Cause for Cloud project. And dear Alexis and Pierre, I would like to welcome you aboard and give you the floor. I expect that you have planned that after finishing your presentations, you will allow some time for questions and for sharing some comments from the part of the participants. Just to mention that present in this webinar from the part of the Environmental Education Lab and the Cause for Cloud project, of course, are Naya Grilla, Zivika and Dimitris Godzos. And one final thing is that this webinar is being recorded, and after its completion, the video will be available for others to watch through the Cause for Cloud's YouTube channel. So I would like to thank you all once again for joining this webinar, and give the floor to Pierre and Alexis.
Thank you very much, Maria. So thanks a lot. So just a few words. So we are really happy to have received your invitation, and it's for us a great opportunity to share some of the experience that we have in the animation of the ntNet platform. And so the webinar will be organized in 3 different parts before the discussion. So a first brief introduction about some botanical concepts that I will do. Then Alexi will introduce much broadly the ntNet platform, its usage, and all the different research activities that we conduct in the development of this platform. And then we will present some scholar program which have been run by partners or by ourselves before the discussion with the participant to the webinar. So if you confirm me that my screen is well shared, I propose to start now, okay?
Everything is settled and we can watch you and the presentation perfectly.
Okay, so let's go. So we just introduced the fact that flowering plants were recorded quite recently at the geological scale. So fossil evidence suggests that flowering plants arose near the beginning of the Cretaceous, around 140 million years ago. But molecular analysis dates the origin much earlier in the Triassic, so more than 60 million years before. But whatever the real date of this origin, since that time, evolutionary forces have contributed to highly diversified flowering plants. And now flowering plants are everywhere on Earth. So they represent around 400,000 plant species at the world level, classified in more than 400 plant families. We can find them from the sea level up to 6,000 meters high in the Himalaya. And as example, some tree species can be found at more than 5,000 meters high in the Andes. All these species has developed extraordinary ecological strategy, which contribute to see a very large diversity of growth form, flower shape, and color and structure, fruits type. So at present time, recently, it was measured that 80% of the full world biomass is represented by plants, as we can see on the left side of this slide in green, which is far before the bacteria, the fungi, and the animal world biomass. This biomass, associated with a high diversity, explain why they contribute so much to provide what we call ecosystem services, which allow human subsistence and life quality, which is illustrated on the right side of this slide. Globally, plants contribute, as example, to clean water with the roots network. They allow us to produce vegetables and to collect various edible plant parts available in the nature. They produce a rich diversity of chemical components that we use in various industry or for medicine. They are also at the origin of a lot of raw material that we use for construction, for example. So they participate, among other things, to flood control, climate mitigation, soil formation. So this short list alone illustrates why plant species are so important for us and why it is extremely important to conserve them on the long term for our subsistence. In order to facilitate their analysis and the study of their relationship, we have classified them in different interlocking concepts. So we use a mnemotechnic process to memorize the scientific classification applied in what we call taxonomy. This one is in English. King Philip came over from Great Spain. So in which king is for kingdom, which is in our case defined plant kingdom. Word Philip is for phylum, which is in our case the phylum of Angiospermatophyta. Word came is for classes. In the past, we used to speak about monocotyledone and dicotyledone, but now phylogenetic analysis allowed us to consider 3 different classes: basal angiosperm, monocot, and eudicot. Term over is to define the order in which we organize plant family according to the recent plant phylogenetic analysis. From is used for family. As mentioned previously, we know around, at present time, 116 plant family at the world level. And the largest one, as just to remember, Asteraceae, family of Aster, Orchidaceae family, and Fabaceae family, in which we often know the Acacia species. The genus is a particular group of plants within the plant family, and here we illustrated with a set of these images several species of an Orchidaceae genus, which is named Bulbophyllum. The species level, illustrated here by the name Bulbophyllum lasiochyllum, contain both the term of the genus under which the species is organized and what we call the specific epithet. In that case, the term in red, lasiochyllum. Together, we call them the scientific Latin binomial name. And this is a way by which we name all the plant species on Earth, a system which was defined a long time ago by the Swedish botanist Carl von Linné. So this system is also used to name plant and fungus. In botany, in flowering plants, all the flowers have an outer ring that forms the male part and an inner one that composes the female part. So the female part illustrated on the right of this slide, of this schema, is called the stamen, with the anther that contains the pollen and the filament. The female part illustrated on the left is divided between the stigma, the stele, and the ovary at the base. Some flowers have both female and male parts, others have only female or male one. Petals and sepals at the bases of this figure form the perianthes, a flower part which can be optional. And so the arrangement, the number of stamen, carpels, petal, and sepal was used by Carl von Linné to categorize plant families. And so the plant taxonomy, which is dedicated to name all individual plants with the correct plant species name, use these criteria to correctly identify and organize plant species. This science of naming organisms and placing them in a hierarchical structure is different of the systematic, which more studies the relationship between species, genera, and family, and which is dedicated to reconstruct what we mention as the evolutionary history of plant life. So in botany, a species is often defined as the largest group of organisms in which any 2 individuals can produce fertile offspring, individual or seeds. a new plant species or several new plant species are recorded for science every year. This description follows the strict rules of the International Code of Botanical Nomenclature, which is revised every 6 years. And so here are some basic rules that are followed to name a plant species. So a correct plant name is established based on its uniqueness, the fact that a single name is assigned to each species concept. A priority, so the oldest legitimate name for a species must be used. And the typification, so each plant's name is associated with an herbarium type specimen on which the description of the species is done. And so these three criteria have to be mobilized when a new species is described and published in a journal accessible to the botanical community. So here we provide an example of this type of record for a species which is present in France and in Greece. So this species, Cercis siliquastrum, has been described for the first time by Carl von Linné, which is mentioned by the Species Plantarum. And we have here in front of us the original description of that species. And I illustrated that species with the herbarium specimen on the right side, which was collected in Italy more than 100 years ago. And this record of that species in that region in Italy is used to provide information and to aggregate information at a larger scale. And all that information related to the scientific binomial name are used to allow us to access to all information produced at national and international level. So this allowed us to know the world, national and international geographical distribution of that plant species, which is illustrated on the left side. So this species is native in France, in Italy, Greece, and it's introduced in India and also Algeria and on the northwest of Africa. So on the right side, we can see the distribution of that species at the national level in Greece. However, this map masks significant disparities of information as for that species in the GBIF platform, which is a global biodiversity information platform, an intergovernmental platform which aggregates raw botanical observation and all information related to biodiversity on Earth. We only have 460 occurrences of that species in Greece, which is not so much. And so the names of the species, the Latin name, allows to access to the species description in various languages, to know all the synonyms of that species, to know the different usage, the protection status, and to access to all the vernacular name of that species in different languages. So all the information collected in the past has allowed to record just less than 6,000 plant species for the entire flora of Greece. On the GBIF platform, again, here, we can see that this platform contains high number of occurrences, around 262,000 occurrences, but only less than 50,000 of them are illustrated with picture. So we can see that there is a strong geographical and taxonomical imbalance. Below, in the right bottom corner, we can see the number of occurrences for the most recorded species in that platform. And so as we can see, some species are recorded by more than 1,000 occurrences. So this illustrates the fact that a lot of them are illustrated with a really, really small number of occurrences. So in order to provide this record, we have to find a way to identify the plant species in the field. And so the most widely used way to identify plants for botanists is the use of field book, in which we can find identification keys. So these keys allow the user to identify a particular species based on the response to a series of questions. So here is the example for the identification of plants of the British flora based on what we call a vegetative key. So a user of that book, that field identification book, has to manage and to well understand all the terminology, the vocabulary used to describe the vegetative part of plants. And so, as we can see, it is not adapted for young people who don't know yet plant morphology and terminology. Another type of field identification tool is the illustrated guide. So these one are based on picture or drawing, which allows the user to compare plant in front of them and the species illustrated on the guide. And so the use of this guide is efficient if you have one guide for all the species of the area in which you prospect. But it's unfortunately not possible, mainly for print cost, to provide the illustration of all the criteria allowing the correct identification of a species all along the year. And so the visual aspect of a plant can change a lot according to the season. And so identification has just some limitation, as you don't know precisely for which season has been designed this identification tool. And this explains partially why we invest in the context of PlantNet in the experimentation of new approach for plant species identification. And so in the context of PlantNet, we invest in the use of large-scale multimedia data on the force of the social network to collaboratively evaluate and revise data quality, and to develop and experiment machine learning methods to quickly analyze visual botanical content. And so now I will let Alexis continue in order to introduce you the PlantNet platform. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Pierre. I think you need to authorize me to share the screen, because I see the button, but when I press on it, I cannot share the screen.
Can you try it again now? I just finished to...
Yes, no, still not working.
No?
So
Okay.
you can either let me as
I think Maria, can you allow him to do that?
Yeah, or maybe it's Maria. I thought you were the host, but maybe it's Maria.
No, I don't still anymore hosts. Okay, you should be able to do it now.
Is it okay? You see it?
Yes, it's not in a full screen. Yes, but it should be okay soon. Yeah.
Yeah, make it in full screen. Yeah.
I think it was
yeah, do you think?
on the icon that you have just before, it was present. And I don't know if you have the button on the right side of the screen here. Not anymore. Yes, so present, yes.
Sorry for that. So good morning, everybody, and thank you, Pierre, for the botanical introduction. And I will now present you more the PlantNet platform. And so PlantNet is a citizen observatory that is dedicated to the monitoring of all this biodiversity, this plant biodiversity that Pierre told you about. And the originality is that it relies on machine learning as a way to help people identify plants using their cell phones, and so to collect botanical data in an easy way. And so basically the system relies on what we call artificial intelligence, but what we rather call as scientists machine learning algorithms. And in particular, we are using a kind of machine learning algorithms that are called convolutional neural networks. And so from a usage perspective, you only see what you see as a user is just that you take some pictures of the plants. These pictures will be sent to a server, and then there will be an algorithm that will infer the most probable species names and return the answer on your smartphone. And what is happening on the server side is that there is a pre-trained algorithm, which is, sorry? Yeah, which is this convolutional neural network. So it's a kind of function that analyze the content of the pixels and identify some visual patterns that has been trained to recognize for a particular species. And then it outputs the most likely species. And the system also returns you the images of the database that are the most similar to the picture, to the query picture, so to the plants that you have in front of you. And so the way such algorithm works, so they are very powerful, but they are only inferring what they have in the database. That means that you can only recognize what the system has seen in the images of the data set. So the most important part regarding this artificial intelligence algorithms is what is in the training set. So any bias that you can have is related to the data that you have in the database. And in the case of PlantNet, this database is fully open because all the pictures that are in the training set are the ones that are visible in the application and that can be revised, discussed, and shared across the users. So this is just a brief history. So we started in 2011, and so we had a first web application at that time, which was really on leaf scans, and that we probably have to admit was working very bad to compare to what is feasible today. And the progress in less than 10 years has been amazing. So because the technology progressed, the people contributed data and revised data, and the system grew. And so in 2014, we had a first Android version on the mobile phone. And then in 2015, we integrated these deep learning technologies, these new technologies that really allowed to have an improvement in performance. And so starting from 2016, we really enlarged the geographical extent of the application. And now PlantNet is really becoming a real scientific observatory with some scientific studies conducted on the produced data, and also the data shared to this international platform that Pierre told about. Just a few numbers. So now we have a community of around 10 million users. So some just use the application to identify plants for themselves, but some create accounts, so 2 million of them. And some of them are very active also in revising the data and sharing their experience with the other users. So there are different types of usage. So some people just use it for their personal usage. So in the nature, during walking, trekking, or for gardening, or for houseplants, or for phytotherapy, or to identify eatable plants. And we have around 12% of people that really use the application for their professional usage. So for agriculture in particular, for natural area management, for consulting, and of course for education. So we will talk about that a little bit more. But also for tourism or for florists, for instance. So all the contributors of PlantNet, so when you install the application on your smartphone, you agree to share the data that you are producing with the community. And so you are not obliged to share your geolocation, but if you accept also to share your position, this allows to collect new plant occurrences. And so it will associate a species name to a given location. And all this information are then useful to model the distribution of the plants in the system. And so as you can see, the number of collected observations is growing very fastly along the years with the amount of users increasing. And so the network produced more and more data about plant biodiversity. And so, as Pierre told you, an important place where this data is shared is this intergovernmental platform, which is the JBIF. And this is the place where other researchers and scientists will download the data and access to this data to do their own research on biodiversity or on ecology or on other topics. And so far, there have been around more than 7,000 downloads on JBIF that are making use of PlantNet data. So that means that some people came to the platform, we are looking for some species in some countries, and then in this way, they used the PlantNet observations that were collected to this platform. So this is the occurrences in Greece. I think Pierre already showed them. So here it's only the PlantNet part of this. And so it's around 23,000 occurrences, but only 700 species. So if you remember, Pierre told about several thousands of species in Greece. And so far in PlantNet, we are only collecting in Greece 700 species. So that does not mean that all other species cannot be identified, because some of them are also present in other countries. But that means that in terms of monitoring the species in Greece, we only have this part of species that are represented in the data. And so this is just some very brief examples of the kind of research that are being performed on PlantNet data. So on the left, it was a study related to invasive species and to study some new invasions, because PlantNet is really reactive. It's a system that is very fast, and so it is capable to detect some new invasion. And on the right, it was more a fundamental research work in ecology, and that was using PlantNet data to study species distribution and the interactions of species between them. There are also some research in the machine learning community, so researchers in informatics that are themselves using PlantNet data to improve the identification algorithms. Or on the last one is research on methods in ecology. So here they are using PlantNet data to study some factors, and in particular in this work they are studying the impact of the structure of the landscape on the distribution of the plants. So now I will briefly present you the main PlantNet tool, so to identify plants. So I'm starting with the web version. So the PlantNet web tool is easily accessible by just searching for PlantNet on Google. So, and you can go on the website. And the first website where you are is just the presentation website. And here you have the links to the three main tools. So you can either download the application on your smartphone, so for Apple or for Android, or you can access the web version of PlantNet that I can see here. And so on this web version of PlantNet, there are several flora. So if you are not working on a specific flora, you can simply choose the word flora. And here you can start an identification. So what you have to do is to provide one or several images of the plants that you want to identify. So here it's the web version, so I cannot take a picture with my laptop. So I will have to choose an image on my disk. And here I have chosen one example of the plant Pierre was talking about, which is Cercis siliquastrum. Okay, so I can upload one first image, and then I can add another one, okay, illustrating the leaf. So the more images you provide, and the better will be the identification performance. So sometimes plants can have very similar flowers or very similar leaves. And so the more pictures you will provide, and the better you have a chance to identify correctly your plants. So when I have uploaded my picture, I can press the identify button, and it will return me some results. And often you can have several results, because sometimes the algorithm cannot decide between two possible species. Here we see one first species, Cercis siliquastrum, which was the right one. It was the one Pierre was talking about. But as we can see, there is another Cercis of the same genus, but of a different species that is very similar to the first one, but that is judged to have a little bit less confidence score than the first one, as we can see here. So sometimes it's possible to distinguish the species by looking in more details to the species. Okay, I can open the sheet related to the species. And on this sheet, there are a lot of information about the species, but including some pictures of the species. And I can go specifically to the flower of this, or I can go to the leaf gallery of this. And I can have a closer look to the species and try to refine my identification. Okay. What we can see also on this page is the common names of the species. And so here by default, it's in English, but if you go to this button here, you can have more languages, so including Greek. And PlantNet says that the common name of this Cercis siliquastrum L. is Kutsupia, if my reading of Greek is still valid.
Correct.
No?
Correct. Great.
I was learning Old Greek, not modern Greek, but that's correct. And so I don't know if it's the most commonly used name in Greece for this tree, but if it's not, you can add yourself some proposition of common names, because common names are really sometimes very local or sometimes global. So it's really open to PlantNet contributors to enter new common names of the plants. The real true entry is a scientific name that really identifies the species, but you can enter other common names and vote on them. Okay, what you can see also on the web application, or sorry, I had something else to show the species, and you can also access here the map of the observations that are collected by PlantNet. Okay, that we can see here. And so all the observations that you will contribute to PlantNet will appear on this map if you agreed the geolocation on your smartphone. You are not obliged to. And you can also access some information about the timing of the flowering of the plants, for instance. All this information are called phenology. It's the temporal, the seasonal behavior of the species. Okay, and here we have the stream of contributions of the other PlantNet contributors. And so here you can see the most recent observations that have been done today. And if you go on the details of one observation, you can vote on the image quality to say, okay, I think it's good quality or not good quality. You can change the label. Is it the fruit, the flower, the leaf, the bark, or the entire view of the plant? And if you know the real right name of the species, and if you think it's an error, you can also propose another species name, but for that, you need to be signed in. Okay, and here, in that case, you can either vote on the previous scientific names that were entered by the previous contributor, or enter another name in the checklist that is in the system. Okay, and this is the way the data are revised. So usually it's more botanists that have this knowledge, but there are also some amateurs or people that knows some species. Of, even if you know very few species, you can at least revise the species you know. Okay, and maybe the last thing I can show in the app is my observations. So this is the view of all the observation I made myself. Okay. And so it's basically a similar view with each time the pictures of the observation I made. And if you need them, you can export your observation to CSV format if you need to study that, or for scientists who need to export the observations, or for managers of parks who wants to download the data. All right, so Pierre, would you like to show the mobile app, or we are too short and maybe it's adapted here? Because Pierre has a tree in his office, so he can show the mobile version of the app. Do you hear me, Pierre? We don't hear you. You need to, yeah, you are muted.
Yes, I can do that in 50 seconds. Okay. Or we can avoid to not disturb too much, as you want. So on the it's probably better to do it. So continue, and if we have time later, we will do it. Okay, if needed.
All right. So I was here. I'm finishing this. Here I was. So each contribution to PlantNet is important. So for several reasons. So the first one is that it improves the visual diversity of the database. So even if you have already many or tens or maybe hundreds sometimes of images of a species, when you provide a new picture of this species, you will allow the system to improve the recognition performance. So on the left here, I see an example of a species, carica. I don't know how you say figue in English, I don't remember. Yeah, sorry, how do you say, Pierre?
So figs, it's a ficus and it's
okay,
figs in English. Yeah.
And so the morphology of the leaf can be very diverse. So if you only provide this kind of leaf to the system, you cannot recognize this kind of leaf. So it's important that the system knows all kinds of different morphology of the plant. And so another thing is that each occurrence will improve the geographic coverage of the database, as we saw in Greece, for instance, in some of my previous slides, and it will also improve the models that are built on top of these occurrences, as we can see with my small example here. If you had one occurrence at some place where the system thought that it was not present, it will really improve its knowledge of the distribution. So sometimes a single occurrence can be even crucial. So we have got a story last summer of in a reservoir with whom we are working in Kenya, the Liwa Wildlife Conservancy. And one tourist took a picture of a species that is known to be highly invasive. And it was just on the border of the reservoir. And so when the managers of the park discovered that occurrence in PlantNet, so they were horrified, but at least they could take some decisions and set up some actions to try to limit this invasion. And so this illustrated how citizens can contribute also to the conservancy of the reservoir by themselves contributing to the surveillance of the biodiversity of the park. And of course, more generally, PlantNets may be used as a teaching tool and to reconnect children, students with nature, and to do a lot of things that we will see afterwards. Pierre will present you some programs. Here I just illustrated one. We were not aware of them ourselves. It was just on Twitter that people are using PlantNet in some school in the UK and by themselves and in the scope of a program. But Pierre will told you about 3 programs, I think, of 4 maybe, that we were involved in ourselves.
Thank you, Alexis. Thank you very much. It was very informative, both of you, the presentation from both of you. So we now go on with Pierre. This is the part about the school projects with the use of PlantNet. Great.
So Alexis, can you stop to share your screen? And so Maria, can you allow me to share it? Alexis, just if you have the opportunity to try to respond to the question on the chat. I respond to few, but I think it could be useful if when I talk, if you can have a look, if there is some question in order to clarify things. So I will
Alexis, you have to turn the host position to Pierre, because it's still with you and I cannot do something more. So you have to turn back to Pierre or to me, the host position.
Yeah, you have to click on my video or the video of Maria to change the animator.
Yes, that's down.
Okay. Okay. So here you should be able to see my screen, a white paper on which I will put the my mobile phone. So can you confirm me that you can see the interface of my mobile?
Yes.
Yes. So the idea just before so I take the opportunity during the change of the speaker to make a short demo of the PlantNet app, of the mobile version, which is mainly used and most famous one among the different tools of the PlantNet platform. So when we open it, we can see the list of the last contribution. So as you can see here, the interface has been translated by in Greece by a person and a group of people who did that translation. So this translation have to be updated and improved based on the new characters that we provide, new features that we develop and implement in the app. But as you can see here, there is already several texts which are translated. So I can revise or validate any observation. So if I click on the red button here, I can see the observation with the name of the contributors. I can vote on the proposed species name, or I can go back or suggest any new names if I'm not sure about the identification of that species. And so I can explore all the observation shared by the network of users. And so this is a real-time stream of the data share. Here is a list of the different projects as it was introduced on the web version by Alexis. And here I will start to make an identification. So if I select one project, after that, just the connection is quite low. I will click on the camera. So this allows me to select the gallery or the camera of my smartphone. So here I'm in my office. I move a little bit. Okay. And so here you can see that tree. So instead of taking a picture of the whole plant, I have to go really closely in order to do the most informative picture as possible. So here with a leaf in the middle, in the center, with the widest size as possible in order to avoid to have too much background or too much noise. And so I try to select, I could say, a good sample without too much damage, without insects inside. And then I click on use the images. I mention that's a leaf, and I send the identification request. And I obtain here again, as in the example of Alexi, a list of the most probable species name. And the first one is a correct one. And then I can go and explore all the images of that species that we have here for the flower, but here for the leaf. And so as you can see, we already have a green and autumnal leaf of that species. And if I'm sure about the species name, I can share it. And when this will be done, I'm able to see it on the last observation, on the stream of the last observation share among the application. So just a few seconds. I'm sorry about the quality of the connection in my office, because the images, the speed to see the image is not so important. And so here, when I come back here, I should be able to see my share observation that I cannot see. Yes, here, because somebody already shared images just after me. So after this small demo, I will not invest too much on the mobile app because we could spend much more time. But the idea now is to share the feedback of educators who share with us the program that they have established at different scale with group of children of different ages. So let me cut that. I come back here. And so we will introduce 4 different methods of appropriation of uses of the platform for educational purpose. So the first one was developed by Zivika, which is a NGO, educational environmental NGO working in Slovakia. And with their partner in Czech Republic, they organize 2 biodiversity monitoring at the national scale in their respective country. So on the left side, you can see the map of the country, and each icon, black icon, illustrates a school that joined the program. And so what they did, they train a group of people in each school. So initially it was 1 teacher, then a teacher with a small group of children, and they train them to use the application and to conduct a program at the scale of the school, at the scale of the classroom, at the scale of the school, and then to engage parents and people interested to record plant biodiversity around the school to participate to that program through the PlantNet platform. So as we can see on the first picture on the top here, it's training that were initiated with a teacher, and so they join different teachers during a physical seminar organized in order to exchange experience, to exchange the feedback of the use of the application. And in second time, they conduct training with the teacher and a group of students of the teacher who came to the training. And so in that case, they organize a seminar of around 50 people. So 3, 4, or 5 groups. Each group is coming from one particular school, and they were trained to use the app and to share feedback about the usage of the app when they came back to the classroom. So this explains why the number of users in Slovakia was so important and increased so much during the duration of their program, of their 2-year program. So here is the number of users that start to increase at the beginning or in the middle of 2017, and we can see that it starts to really increase a lot the volume of people who start to be interested to use the application in Slovakia based on their activity and the communication campaign that they organize. So the project was organized in 2 years. The first year it was dedicated to use the application, share feedback about the usage of the application, and at the end of the first year, participants were invited to develop a communication campaign. And so this was done in order to involve them in communicate the interest of biodiversity for human life, and so how to promote the conservation of that biodiversity based on the usage of the app. And so they organized, so each team in each classroom was able to define the type of communication that they want to do. So some of them directly contact the media, so to conduct a radio interview, TV interview. So some of them write description about the local biodiversity that they share with in the newspaper. They organize also stand in different forums locally, and so the diversity of media channels was really important and diversified. And in our case, Alexi and myself were really surprised about this diversity and the creativity of the people and of the teams that were motivated to communicate about this activity. And the second year, participants were invited to create a quest, botanical quest. So you can see here 3 illustrations of 3 different botanical quests. So the idea, so they are in Slovak. So the idea was the children have to define a series of questions. The response to each question, which is often a place, a name of a monument, or a plant species, allowed you to access to the next question and to progress in your quest. So you are physically somewhere with this paper, and you try to follow a trail which allows you to discover the natural or historical culture of the place that you explore. And so the children did that quest in order to engage and invite, it can be parents or tourists or any visitor of the landscape around the school, to discover the biodiversity recorded by the students. And so in the end, once again, we're really surprised to see the scale of the program and the volume of students engaged in that program and the diversity of quests that were displayed, because in the end, they did that quest and they tried to do their best to share that quest on the website of the school, on the website of the city, on the website of the tourist agency, in order to promote this new way to explore the natural landscape. So another program that we conduct was done with much older students, and it was organized to as a treasure hunt. So the idea here was to prepare a field where we already record some species that we want to be discovered by the students. And so we create this species list, we print some questionnaires that I will show you soon, and we organize the participants by a duo in order to facilitate them the exchange of perception about the capacity of the application, about the difficulty to produce good images to obtain the best identification result as possible. And so here is the type of file that we provide to the participants. So we print on images in which we have a botanical illustration, not a picture, because we think that illustration increase the capacity of the participant to analyze the plants, because on the drawings usually you have a lot of detail that have been highlighted by the person who produced it in order to highlight the criteria for the species identification. And you can also have a several view at different scale of the same species. So here it's a famous species that we have in the garden that we visit with the participants, and we provide them a short description and this illustration, and we ask them to find that plant, to make an illustration and to correctly identify it, and to produce this type of observation for few dozens of plant species in the botanical garden in which we organize that activity. And so here is the illustration of the different question that we ask to the participant. You can see that sometimes you only have a drawing, sometimes you have a combination of a drawing and a picture when the drawing is not clear enough, or when we want to highlight different scale of observation. And you can make the choice to focus only on the native plants, only on herbs used in medicine, only on toxic plants. It depends if you want to focus the training and the activity on a particular group of plant of interest related to the other courses that the student follow. But this gives you an idea of the diversity that we try to cover. And in the end, at the end of the program, you share with the participants on site, directly in the areas that you prospect, the response to each species. And here is the template that we share with the participants. So we ask them to record the species name on the printed document, and we collect the printed document in order to know if they recognize the species, and if they were able to record a plant observation of that species in the garden that we prospect. And if there is an interest to have a challenge, you can imagine to count the number of correct records done by the different group of participants. So another program that was organized by a NGO based in Reunion, Iceland, is a plant puzzle. So the idea here was to organize at the level of one trimester to challenge different classes. So the organizer creates and exchange plant puzzle who are shared on the web. And so the teacher of a particular class go to the website, for example, at the beginning of the week or at the beginning of the day. It depends the frequency at which the organizer exchange and displays the puzzle. And so he can present a combination of words and illustration, or only illustration, or sometimes only a description of a particular plant which is famous for a particular usage in that region. And the idea is to ask to the class to analyze the description and the illustration, sometimes to use different tools, identification tools, so it can be field guide and also a PlantNet app, in order to try to identify them and to share their results on the platform itself. So it was a specific web platform that was used by this NGO. And like this, the different classes can see the response of the different participants and interact about why they think this species is so this image is a picture of that species, and compare the results and discuss the potential difficulty of identification. And so this needs much more investment of the organizer but on the opposite, there is a less volume of preparation for the teacher who involve his classroom to conduct that, because he don't have to create these puzzles. He's like he represents the classroom, the full classroom, and so he tried to interact with children at the scale of this classroom in order to share the response of the full classroom on the web forum. And so here, for example, it was an example share on that forum. So I could have lived underwater, but I prefer to invade the fence. Who I am. And so this species is a coral liana. This is why the organizer of that program say I can live underwater. It is not true. It's not a submarine liana. It's just because the name of the liana in a common name is a coral liana. And so this NGO did a really great job. And so they organized a full program. So I only print the first page of the program that they organize and promote among the network of teachers who are part of that network. And the last program that was shared with us is a program which are conducted by professors who want to facilitate or increase the interests of students to urban biodiversity. And so what they used to do in that context is that they present how to use the application, and they ask to the students when they go out of the school to record some of the species that are present in the urban landscape. So you can decide to focus that monitoring only on tree species, or only on lianas, only on small herbs. And when they think that they have correctly identified the plant species, they ask to the students to write the name of that species on the floor in order to highlight the fact that, hey, here in our foot, we can see that there is already some biodiversity. It's a real one. Nobody plants that plant, and the name is the first way to recognize the species, an individual plant. And so this is why they ask to write the name on the ground with chalk. And after that, several students and teachers share their picture and illustrate the fact that in one way they increase the visibility of this unseen urban biodiversity, and they promote this activity and highlight the fact that in the end there is several different species who live and develop close to human activity, and it was a way to use that urban diversity to increase attractivity of botany on a practical way. And so this was the fourth one that we want to share with you. So I think that we have almost finished for the document and presentation that we have planned to do. So we will be now really happy to exchange with the participant and try to respond to any questions that you have.
Thank you very, very much, Pierre and Alexis and Pierre. Your presentations were really very informative, full of new information for all of us. And I think that, well, all parts, but especially the last part with the real examples of school projects that had made use of the PlantNet platform are really inspirational sources for all of us. And they provide us something like a bridge for what we are supposed to do during our next steps in the online course, which is actually to design new activities and to create new projects that are adapted to the school students of primary and secondary schools in Greece. So these projects that have already taken place in other countries can become a real inspirational material for all of us to contemplate on and to use them as starting points for other creative ideas. I think that many of the participants have already shared very positive comments in the chat about your presentations. They are really happy about what you presented to us, and you have already responded to some of the questions posed. I would like now to open the discussion to more of the participants who would like to take the floor and ask you anything that they may feel important to know. Is anyone who would like to ask something to Pierre and to Alexis? Who would like to share with Pierre and Alexis any kind of question about what they have presented us? Let me ask a question to all of us, addressing all of us. Just to, to use it as a way to steer a discussion between all of us. I was talking for myself when I said before that these 4 examples of school projects, school activities were really a good starting point for the Greek teachers to think about what they could do in our own, in the Greek school context. But well, that was my idea, my perspective. I would like to listen to some Greek teachers' view on this. Would you think that any of these projects could easily adapt to the school, to the Greek school reality? Or perhaps you have already some other ideas that you could share with Pierre and Alexis now for some other possible uses of the PlantNet within educational projects? Would anyone like to respond? Okay, let me ask Naya, for example. Naya, please. Yeah. Just unmute, yeah?
Yeah, okay. First, I would like to thank Alexis and Pierre for their very to the point presentations. I found them very interesting, both the first part about the introduction with the plants, but the second part about the application of activities about PlantNet in schools was very interesting. I think there is a lot of potential. I have worked with students of 5th and 6th grade with computers, and I think they find it very interesting. If I had the chance to work with students using an app like this, I think it would be something they would find very fascinating. and I feel that we can create very interesting projects with the children using this app. The examples that Pierre showed us were so where the live proof of this. And I think that especially I was amazed by the fact that in Slovakia, for example, the users, there was an explosion in the users after the project. So I think this is a very important part we have to take in mind. I don't know, maybe Dimitris has to add something, who is also very experienced in projects in schools.
Dimitri? Okay, before Dimitris share with us what he thinks, I would like to ask you one question. If you were invited in a school classroom where the teacher is about to design and or to start an educational project making use of PlantNet, and you are in front of the students, let's say they are students aged 10 years old, and they raise their hand and ask you, what is the use of getting involved, getting engaged in this task? Why is it important, and how we who are so small, so young, how we can have any kind of contribution to your project? Why are we important agents in your kind of projects? Who you are scientists, you are researchers, you are based at one or two of the most prominent European research centers, and you have a lot of interest and incentives to want to register and identify biodiversity in several European regions. But how we can help you? Is it reliable enough that we who are 10 years old can provide some real help, or everything that we do after, I don't know, 2 months' time or 1 month's time is going to get to the garbage? Let's try to think of this possible scenario, and I would like you to provide an answer to this 10 years girl who is really skeptical about why to get engaged in such a task.
So maybe I would say to her that if she's happy to have some flowers in the school, outside the school, it's important that people who decide knows that this plant is important for her. And so she has to let them know that this plant is important for her. And monitoring biodiversity is what we do. It's important to say that here there was something that is not here afterward. But for a 10 years old, I would say that in this way. I mean, this is important that the plants you have in your school, you have to let people aware that this is important for you. So, and if it's then in the system and in the monitoring and in all these big systems, this school will be taken into account in the results or in the decisions that could be taken from this data. So that's the first thing. But maybe, yeah, more importantly, that if he uses PlantNet and then he knows the name of this plant. He will be able to say the name of this plant to 10 other students, and themselves could say the name of these plants to 10 other students. And naming these plants is really a first way to be aware of them and to be aware of their importance. And so my opinion is that, yeah, it's really the environmental education that is important. And so often people and children, they see animals and so they are very happy in zoo and things like that. But plants like the ones Pierre showed, that are this just weeds in the urban environment. So people are not aware that this is biodiversity and that these plants have a name, and that if you look closely, they often have beautiful flowers, but they are small. And so you have to look at them very closely to see that they have beautiful flowers as well, and not like big rosa, but, and so somehow probably the most important thing is that they will learn the name of this plant, and they will be aware of this plant when they will see it again afterwards. Yeah.
What we try to develop is the capacity of the user in the end. So what we hope is to transform the user to much more curious people, because we allow them to explore their natural environment, to name the different species, and based on that, to know much more about the benefits that they have about these different species that they have in their garden, that they can meet in the streets when they go to the school. And so there is a balance that we try to grow, is the capacity of the platform to easily recognize and record plant species along the way from her home to the school, and also the capacity that we have to share that observation at the larger scale as possible, in order to provide to any scientist interested to study this species, to study this area, to study the ecological forces that engage the development of that species in that region, or that could project a much shorter period of flowering period for that species. So the volume of raw data that exists at present time on plants is so small that in the end, any new contribution is very important. So except for some species which are really, really, really highly recorded, and even that just occurred a few years ago. It was not really the case 10 or 15 years ago. So except for only a small fraction of plants, most of the record and information that we have is really low. And so this is even more important when you move to areas which are less prospected, much less close to important human activity, urban center, and so on. So the contribution is really important in that way. So you never know for which the observation that you will produce will be useful. But for sure, this observation was probably never be done before, and it will be a fruitful and a long-term record of the biodiversity that were observed in that place and in that period.
Well, thank you very much. You answered my question, and well, I gather and I keep with me that every contribution matters. Every contribution matters, and as a second thing to me is that my personal contribution and my personal experience matters.
Yeah.
So both are important incentives, let's say, for students to get involved in something which is meaningful for them and for others. Okay. Anyone else? Dimitris and anyone else who would like to add anything?
Yes, I just like to stress what Alex said about curiosity, because children are by their nature curious. So it's a good way to start from their curiosity and exploit their curiosity in order to search the school garden, or even their as it has been said, their way from their home to the school, to identify plants and other species. And as I said in the chat, especially the idea about organizing a treasure hunt game, I think it will be very children would like this, because it combines playing with learning, and that's what children want most. And as I already commented in the chat, is an idea very easily adaptable to a local park, or even to a school garden, if there is any. And I really liked also the live demonstration of the device, because I think that now it is evident that it is a very simple to use device. And of course, as you also, the interface is in Greek, so I think it would be I think that children would use it even more easily than us. So thank you very much.
Maybe a last point of discussion will be the usage of smartphones. So for children with 10 years old, we'll be happy to have some feedbacks from teachers, like, is it a good idea to let children use directly the smartphone or not, or it's better if the teacher use the phone, and also there is the difficulty to have phones, which is the primary one, I mean, so yeah.
But there could be some mixed procedure, let's say, where the children can take pictures with their mobile phones, the ones who have mobile phones, or they may use another photo machine, more traditional, to take pictures and bring these pictures in the classroom, and use with their teachers the web version of this application, of this platform. So I don't think this can be an obstacle. There are more ways to reach the goal. What I would also welcome if I were a teacher in school, or if I were a student in school, what I would very much welcome would be to have some, that my classroom or my group, my group of students would have some pairing with the students from another school, either in Greece or outside Greece, in Europe, let's say, with the students from another European country, and compare and contrast the data, the observations they made in each particular group among them, between them. I think that would also provide an extra incentive for the students to want to collaborate both within their classroom, but also outside their classroom, with groups of students, mates from other places or from other countries.
During the preparation of that webinar, so we interact with our partners in Slovakia, and so Ivana said that we will have the opportunity to continue the collaboration, and it could be great if we could potentially organize such exchange, we could say, and comparison of approach and benefit. And in the project designed by Zivika, and Teresa, the two environmental educational NGO, they also organize some kind of competition among the different schools in each country, and the teams who organize the best communication campaign and who produce the largest and the most remarkable botanical data set based on the fact that the images were of good quality, the species were not so common and not so easy to record. So they won a weekend in an educational center in a natural place, so far from a urban city and a city center. And it seems that it was a really good incentive mechanism to motivate the different group to do their best to produce accurate and remarkable data and to invest in a communication campaign. And so as we are, myself biologist and Alexi computer scientist, we are not so, it's not so common for us to organize activity with schools and classroom. And so I was surprised by the fact that in the Slovakia context, they really were able to organize these trainings at different scale. First the teacher, then the teacher and some of their students, then trainings with different groups between different schools, and then try to organize meetings of these different groups in order to facilitate exchange and of experience and to increase the scale of the full program. So I think the communication campaign was something that we could not have in mind in my case, and that was probably really stimulating for the children because it increased their creativity, and as they were free to select the media vector that was the most appropriate for them. So sometimes it was drawings, to make a cartoon, or to just make a big poster, or to do an interview at the radio. So this was really also something, a complementary activity, not really related to field observation, but that has engaged them a lot to invest the subject in order to be able and confident enough to share their feedback in a media campaign.
Well, everything is very important, very interesting. And I think as we warm up ourselves a bit more now, maybe more people would like to add, to offer, to share with us their ideas. But in case they need some more time to think about and try out their own ideas, their own designs, well, I think that we should invite you in our next phase of our project. We invite you to share, so that we share with you now our own ideas for new projects. When we are ready with some more concrete and more elaborated ideas of how we could use PlantNet in the context of Greek educational projects in Greek schools, then we could invite you to let you know about. What do you think about this?
Yes, yes, sounds good. I think, yeah, that we'll be happy to interact about some potential ideas, and so maybe hopefully help to set up some details, or that you could have not think about from a technical point of view, but yeah, for sure.
We also work on a different new feature on the platform level that should facilitate group activities, and so when you will come back to us, we can also share with you the new feature which are potentially well adapted to educational context. When you have some professor who want to have a view of all the data shared by the children in his classroom and so on. So do not hesitate to provide us a feedback about the limitation of the platform for educational activity, because this really helps us to develop and orient the new developments that will be done in the future towards that objective.
Great. So we will definitely be in touch, because we now start with experimenting with the PlantNet platform. And what we aim to do is to become as much creative as we can with all our available tools. Well, PlantNet is among these tools. And we offer you this opportunity to share with you, and that you share with us all new ideas that will be developed in the future. So I would like to thank you again for being here virtually with us and leading this very informative webinar. You shared as much as you could with us to let us all start with some real good basis about what is PlantNet and how this platform could be used in educational reality. And I think by expressing all of us, we would like to thank you and expect to see you again very soon.
Thanks a lot for the invitation as well. And
yes,
and let's keep in touch.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks a lot to everyone.